about the king, the bath attendant, and the potter. King Wenceslas, one of the historic Czech rulers, was highly attuned to his commoners. He liked to go out into the streets of Prague disguised as a pauper and listen to what his subjects were thinking about. On one occasion, when he reached the river, he espied a beautiful swan there entering the creek. He watched intently as it approached the porch of a house by the shore. A beautiful girl came out onto the porch and started to feed the swan. The king began to talk to her. She introduced herself as Susanna and invited him to come indoors. Inside the house it smelled wonderful. There were a lot of bowls, jugs, and other large containers that had been made by Susanna's brother Jakub. In these were stored a variety of herbs, soaps, and ointments, while the largest of the containers she used for water, since, in fact, she was the town bath attendant. She took pity on the disguised king. She bathed him, she washed his clothes, she trimmed his beard, and gave him the same care as she gave to the rich burghers. While doing so, she complained about how high the taxes were that she had to pay, purportedly because the collectors actually kept a large part of the money for themselves. Then Jakub also joined her and complained of being badly treated. Wenceslas listened attentively, and then he thanked her and left. When Susanna later cleaned the dishes of the table, to her amazement, she found 2 ducats hidden beneath the bowl. Meanwhile, the king had already decided that he should punish the collectors and rid them of their rights. They did not want to accept this, however, and they made an agreement with the discontented members of the nobility who, following the king's intervention, had also lost their illegal earnings. Once, when Wenceslas returned from Žebrák Castle to his Prague seat, he was suddenly surrounded by a group of men-at-arms. They arrested him and wanted him to not only cancel this law, but also to renounce his royal rights in front of the Diets. To force him to sign, they kept the king for long days in a dark and dirty cell. The heat of the summer was at its peak, and Wenceslas therefore asked his captors if he could go to the baths and wash before the council took place. They finally agreed, thinking that his will had already been broken. The strongest and the most capable of the guards took him to the baths by the Vltava River and guarded him carefully. The bath attendant Susanna, with her brother Jakub, who immediately recognized who that beggar had really been, took care of him. They prepared the most aromatic bath possible for him, but what the king asked them for was help with correcting an injustice. When the guards banged on the door, an idea came to Jakub. He took the pieces of cloth that were used for lining the tubs, tore them into pieces, and tied them together. Then he took the soap, spread it over the floor, and poured water over the hot stones in the baskets until the whole room was filled with dense steam. Susanna quickly ushered the king to the porch above the river, and at that exact moment the armed men rushed inside. The steam blinded their eyes, and soon they were rolling about in a heap. The bath attendant lowered the sheets towards the water where a boat was anchored. They pushed off from the shore just as the first of the armed men ran onto the porch and pointed a crossbow at them. At that moment, a large swan blocked his view, thereby also startling all the birds in the bend of the river. The whole flock of them took off together and prevented the armed men from shooting at the king. The king arrived in front of the Diets on time, and eventually those who had thrown the king into a dark prison because of his generosity ended up there themselves. Wenceslas richly rewarded both Susanna and her brother. On the site of their house, he had a bathhouse built for Susanna, and he also appointed Jakub as the guildmaster of the potters, to whom in remembrance of this event, the king added a swan to their emblem. This is to say that honesty and fairness stem from the purity of the soul, which is just as necessary as is the purity of the body. It was as true then as it is still true today.